All right. Going live. That looks good. So I'm going to hit record again. I have it record.
I hit it a while ago.
So it's funny, before we get into the show, so I watched one of those Tom Scott videos, and his video was titled, like, why YouTubers clap at the start of their videos. And I thought, for audio synchronization. And so I click on the video, because he's a smart dude, and he says, you're probably going to say for audio synchronization. And you're right, but why don't they edit it out of their videos? And apparently people, like, pointedly edit it into their videos now. And his video was actually about how adding production, like, ephemera to videos and making things look less polished drives viewership to a huge degree. So podcasters who are super professional and videographers who are super professional are letting people see fuck-ups and, like, precursor work, because that engages with the audience more in our fucked up media ecosystem.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like, it makes sense. I mean, like I said, Korean TV, right?
Yep.
It's like they let you see they'll like cut to they'll turn the camera and show you the writers sitting out there, right? It's like they're not hiding at all the fact that the show is scripted to a large extent.
Yep. I still remember there, like, occasionally late night talk shows would do that, and they're like the camera would, like,
only late night the late night talk show guys, they would only ever show the music guy, right? And, like, one production guy who had, like, a name or something.
Yep.
Right? They wouldn't actually be like, all the staff, right? They wouldn't turn the camera around and show you. They'd show you the audience, but they wouldn't show you, like, all the staff standing there off to the side.
Yeah.
Or,
All right. All right, we're good to go. Put a little marker here. Cucuruz Doan. Okay. It's Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geek Nights. Tonight, we're talking about two shows that only one of us watched. I guess movies. The newish Gundam, Cucuruz Doan's Island, and Star Trek Prodigy.
I didn't realize the Star Trek one was a movie.
It's not. It's a TV show.
Oh.
There aren't really Star Trek movies so much lately. It's just TV shows.
Wasn't there a whole bunch of them?
Long time ago. And actually, they're not on Paramount because of rights issues. Paramount has all Star Trek, but the Star Trek movies appeared on Paramount and then disappeared, and appeared again and disappeared.
Those newer movies from,
How new? Most recent Star Trek has been TV for a long time.
No. There were some movies that were recent. Even I know this.
Such as?
Relatively recent, right?
Yeah. Relatively recent. Again, that's fairly longer ago than you're thinking.
No. Oh, there was one, 2009.
That's a long goddamn time ago.
No, it's not.
I think more Star Trek has come out since 2009 than before 2009. Anyway, here, we can get started. Do we have an opening bit that isn't that?
The car is still there.
No, start with that. That's funny. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, okay. So if you listened to our last Geek Nights episode, I talked about the car that appeared under mysterious circumstances.
I'm weirdly invested in this.
That was on Friday night. It is currently Wednesday evening dusk-ish, and the car is still there. So it's Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Car's still there.
It's kind of amazing. Now, it was a holiday weekend, but it is no longer a holiday. It is like regular work time now.
Yeah. So it's like, on the one hand, I just want to wait it out and see what happens and not interfere, right? But on the other hand, I just really want to tell somebody. It's like, I don't want to tell, the authorities.
No.
Like, that's right. It's not my business, but I want to find someone who gives it, at least.
I feel like what this warrants is you make a Reddit post in the Astoria Reddit, be like, so what's the deal?
With this car?
Yeah, what's with this car would be a pretty good headline for that post. Like, what's the deal with this car?
I don't know if anyone else will care, but
I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of thing that would get a very niche audience that could slowly grow a little bit. Depends on how long this lasts. If that car is still there a month from now, suddenly this becomes legendary.
Yeah, I guess I could do the mystery of the car.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You got to go down and put some chalk on the wheel and the road so you'll know if it moved. Because what if someone moved it and parked it again in the weird angle?
That's not going to happen. I don't think
It could. You don't know. Could be a
tow truck is going to move that car.
So speaking of which, my car, the one that we use basically just to go to places that you can't get without a car, if you live in New York City, like ski mountains and hiking places, I was able to get it out. I haven't used this car in months because, I don't drive this car often. Like, I pay a lot to keep this car just to use during the winter and, like, hiking season. And I had something happen to me that I've never had happen in my entire life. I had gas go stale.
What even happens if that happens?
So if you wait long enough, it just won't work. Like, gasoline actually just stops working. It goes stale and has a shelf life, just like anything else. Most people will never encounter this because they use their cars all the time.
You just like siphon all the gas out and pump new gas in?
Yeah, that's pretty much what you have to do if it gets bad. But it's not that stale.
What do you do to dispose of the bad gas?
Dispose of it the same way you dispose of other harmful volatiles. Depends on the...
Google this to learn the chemistry.
Yep. So basically, in this case, I didn't have to do anything because I went to get the car to check it out, drive it around a little bit, which you got to do periodically, which the Russian military seems to have not done with all its cars. And check engine light came on, and I was like, oh. So I drove to like the AutoZone to get the codes pulled because I don't own a thing that'll get the codes out of my car. And it says the engine's running lean. And that actually made sense because there is like an eighth of a tank of gas and that car hasn't moved in a couple months. So that's about the point where the gas would start to go stale. So all I had to do was fill the tank and it's fine. Because I can dilute that little bit of stale gas with a whole bunch of good gas. And I'll be driving the car enough with the hiking coming up and apple picking and all that nonsense to...
Apple picking time is over.
There's a little bit of apple picking left. There's like 2 more weeks of some apples, just not the varieties that people tend to be excited about.
Hardly any varieties. Like
Plus,
2.
I don't eat that many apples. Like, I can't eat the number of apples that I would actually pick apple picking. I go to apple picking to hang out in an orchard, to eat cider donuts, to drink cider, and to go home.
Well, anyway.
Anyway, so in the news, there is actually a ton of news going on in the animation space, but the most important thing that came up very recently is one, not that long ago, like 10 days ago, Cartoon Network celebrated its 30th anniversary.
Yep.
Which is pretty notable. Cartoon Network launched on October 1st in 1992. Took a little while for it to get going, and I'll link to an article that kind of talks about...
Big deal for, even when we didn't have cable, right? Us 10-year-old cartoon watchers who only had Nickelodeon and Saturday morning cartoons. Cartoon Network coming into existence was a big deal, and I was, we did an episode on it.
We did, which I'll link to.
When I was finally able to watch it, or when I could see it at other people's houses or whatever.
Right? So, the news... today, and there's a big internet discourse about this where like a third of people talking about it are acting like it's the end of the world. Another third of them are trying to downplay it and saying it's not as bad as people are saying. You're all just fear-mongering. And another third of them have no idea what the fuck's going on. So the best way I can summarize this is not just Cartoon Network. Cartoon Network and what's happening with them and Warner Brothers is like one tiny piece of the broader puzzle, and it's the same puzzle we've been talking about on Geek Nights for as long as there's been Geek Nights. All media is consolidating into one giant company. It's just happening very slowly, but it's happening, and it's accelerating, and this is the kind of thing that happens when media consolidates. So all the Cartoon Network
regulation.
Yep, all the Cartoon Network stuff seems to it's getting merged into like the generic Warner Brothers pipeline. And Warner Brothers is shutting down tons of stuff and consolidating, and there's all sorts of nonsense going on.
Warner Brothers is like an interesting situation, right? Because Warner Brothers Discovery, right, was up until recently part of AT&T.
Yep, which is already weird and probably should be illegal, but I digress.
Right. Sure, but because of situation, I happen to have a small amount of AT&T stock, despite them being evil or whatever. I had some, right? And I noticed one day I randomly logged into the E-Trade, and I saw that it's like there was a new symbol. I think I told the story on the show before. A new symbol had appeared in my portfolio. And I had not made any trades, and I was like, what the fuck is that? Did someone break into my account, even though it's got all the security on it? What's the deal? And it turns out that I just, wasn't paying enough attention. And they split off Warner Brothers Discovery from AT&T. So everyone who had AT&T stock just got free shares, effectively, of WBD, right? As it split off. And, there's reasons they say they did this, and I'm sure there's real reasons that are not said, right?
No.
But it's a thing that happened. But then, of course, since then, Warner Brothers Discovery, operating as its own deal, has, kept coming back in the news, doing various things.
Yep.
Right?
Warner Brothers, Discovery has canceled tons of projects. There's been all sorts of shenanigans. There's a lot you can go read online. I'm not even going to try to summarize it all.
Yeah, but if you look at the stock price, basically what happened is WBD split off from T, right? And then it basically WBD from that point, it just went down.
Yeah.
Everyone who had it and was paying attention just sold it as soon as they got it.
Yep.
Which is what I should have done, but I didn't know.
Nothing we're saying is financial advice. We're not giving you any investment advice whatsoever.
No, I'm just saying
just making it clear.
No advice. This is just a tale of what happened.
Yeah.
This is what has occurred.
That's actually a line that I use a lot ever since we watched that video that I made a thing of the day about the monkey. It's like, I'm not saying this is a good thing that happened. I am simply saying that it happened.
This is what has happened.
Yep.
Right? There was a split of some kind. The stock price went, and then all these newses keep happening about them doing things.
Yep. So Warner Brothers TV Group Chairman Channing Dungey sent an email or a memo to employees announcing 82 layoffs and 43 current.
82, that's no big deal.
Yeah, well, and 43 additional vacant positions that will no longer be filled, which actually represents a 26% reduction in their scripted, unscripted, and animated divisions combined. 26% is a pretty big number.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not a big place, so it's percentage-wise, it's a big number, but the news came out today that Intel is laying off thousands of people.
Yep.
Right? So it's
But what is that percentage? The whole, capitalism's a failure. That's really the underlying story here. I'd say a third of all Geek Nights newses are actually just us saying capitalism is an egregious failure to humanity in various different ways.
Yes.
But they also announced that they're canceling a bunch of their incubator programs for new talent. So Stage 13 is going away. The Warner Brothers Writers Workshop is going away. The Warner Brothers Directors Workshop is going away. I've seen a lot of non-white creators pointing out that some of these places are where a lot of non-white, non-wealthy people get their start in this industry. So this is one of a series of cataclysms. I feel like the entire entertainment industry, broadly, globally, is barreling toward bad outcomes, but animation seems to be bearing a particular brunt on it right now.
Well, I mean, this is what we've been talking about this since the Napster days.
Yeah.
It's hey, and the days when Creative Commons was a new thing. It's hey, we have the internet now. Which means that artists no longer are gated from distributing their works to the world, right? You don't need to, you can make a movie. We used to, if you made a movie by yourself in the 80s or 90s, it was on a VHS tape that only you and your friends would ever see.
Yep.
Right? And now there's YouTube. So it's when we were kids, we were watching the Saturday morning cartoons. So those cartoons made money because they were covered in advertisements on Saturday morning with lots of viewers, right? And then we watched cable cartoons, which is the same thing, basically, right? But it's now the kids watch the TikToks and the YouTubes, which make some monies, right? But they don't make the mega Hollywood monies that a Saturday morning cartoon could make,
right?
And it's the mega cartoons, a big real professionally made show, like a fucking Adventure Time, costs a lot of money to make. But how much money is it gonna make when you air it? Or sell it, or however.
What's the opportunity? What's the opportunity cost compared to taking that money and putting it in the stock market?
Right. So, and that same story can be told for all sorts of different forms of video and audio entertainment. Right?
I think there's something even more insidious.
Got hit first because the production costs of music are lower, though not always low.
Yep.
And the distribution costs, especially bandwidth, were much lower. Right. It's the music thing happened first.
Yep, but look what also happened there. The same thing that drove reality TV and the same thing that's driving a lot of TV changes now. A lot of people don't care that much about what they listen to or what they watch to. They want something. Like, imagine the kind of person who would just turn on the TV and flip through channels.
Nerds who were like really caring about the something.
Yeah. So I think there's something sort of subtle and slightly insidious going on underpinning all of this. Because one thing we predicted that I still think we're right about, but technology trends have actually sort of staved off one of the outcomes. Advertising still remains, I believe, very strongly, largely a scam perpetrated on almost everyone involved in the ecosystem. But advertising has been the way that most media gets funded, like in America, for most of the history of media in the modern world, like since the advent of radio and television, and even newspapers to a big degree. So, all that said, as that ecosystem gets exposed and collapses, you'd think, well, that revenue dries up and media collapses, and that is happening, but because also the technology trend is most people do not have a general purpose computer anymore. They're using things like TikTok. They're being pushed into appliances and gated applications where they can't avoid advertising. So the media that makes the most money will increasingly be the media that is in those gated ecosystems where advertising is unavoidable, thus propping up the perceived value of advertising and delaying the inevitable destruction of the entire ecosystem.
I think something else that has happened, at least especially in sports entertainment, but also in others, is that there are new ad buyers that have appeared. Right?
Yeah.
Ad buyers
like crypto bullshit was a flash in the pan of ad buying, but they bought a lot of ads before NFTs collapsed.
Gambling is a huge sports gambling is a huge ad buyer, right? So it's like there are new people who are buying ads, right? It's like, other people, a lot of people other than like cars and pharmaceutical drugs and certain things like that, have sort of large and, I guess, soft drinks and whatever. It's like a lot of ad buyers washed up, right? Or they stopped buying ads on, television and started buying, targeted internet ads instead.
Yep. And there was this brief era where most people who use the internet also knew how to block ads, but now most people who use the internet only have a phone and have no understand. They don't even know that blocking ads is a possibility.
But
yeah, it's all going to be rough. And
in terms of cartoons, it's like we're only going to get to watch cartoons if someone can make money making cartoons, and it's very hard to make money making cartoons.
Yep.
Right now.
Never mind the fact that companies can mine their back catalogs forever with almost no incremental cost, and it's just free money for them. And even as consumers, if no anime were ever made again from this point forward, I sadly would still, in my entire life, not run out of anime I kind of want to watch.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't watch most of the anime that comes out. There's a list. We're going to talk about some anime in a moment that I really want to watch, and I just haven't had time to watch yet.
I mean, even a very long time ago, centuries ago, right? Renaissance times, there was still already more music, books, right? They didn't have movies. They didn't have cartoons. Right? there were enough books and songs and whatever else they had that you, in a human lifetime, especially since the human lives then were shorter, you weren't going to get through it all, right?
Yep.
But now we're at a point where basically even a very unfortunate life that's also a long life, right? So you don't have a lot of resources, but you're going to live a long time. And even if you're going to work, and it's like you will never...
I think I have enough entertainment to last the rest of my life just in the videos folder of my NAS right now.
There's enough stuff to last several lifetimes for basically anybody.
Right.
It's like, so how much money in a capitalist society, right, where we're not just we're not putting, just valuing the creation of new art on its own, right? Only valuing how popular is your art.
Especially when the majority of people consuming art don't actually care that much about what particular thing they consume, which you may think that sounds crazy. You're listening to a weird podcast by two guys like us. You are already such an extreme edge case that you are irrelevant to capitalism.
Anyway.
All right. So jump into, I guess you want to talk about the anime we could watch?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. So, speaking of cartoons making any money, for some reason, this anime season, there must be some way that anime are making money.
Yeah.
Because they sure are making a lot of them.
Well, they don't pay anyone who makes anime anything, so that'll eventually dry up on its own.
Right. And, a lot of them are propped up by sponsors or whatnot. But anyway, this anime season that just started like right now is quite unusual in that I'm counting at least 6 to 8 shows that are worth like me paying it personally, keeping notice of, if not just watching, right? Which is a very large number. The typical anime season, usually there's like 2 to 3 shows that maybe I'm thinking about a little bit. Right?
Remember when we used to do, we'd judge anime by its cover? We were really rarely wrong, and there'd always be 2 or 3, like every season.
This season has a lot. So what is out this season? So there's several series that are getting sort of additional seasons, right? I think there's a new Golden Kamuy season, which is something I thought about watching. It's a borderline one, right?
That's for when I'm retired.
Yeah. Mob Psycho, which I watched the first season of, has, I think, a 3rd season coming out now.
That show's great. I didn't even finish the first season. I just haven't had time.
I mean, it was okay. I didn't really feel compelled to watch the 2nd season, but I know it's a big deal show for a lot of people, right?
Yep.
So it's worth paying attention to. The Spy X Family, which I've now watched 3 episodes of in the first season, which I know is a big deal for a lot of people.
That is definitely the kind of show we would instantly show at the anime club if we were still running it.
Oh, absolutely. It's big time, right? Okay, but now what other shows are, right? Oh, there's that Pop Team Epic, that really...
Oh, yeah.
It's like the wacky comedy one, right? That one has a new season going on right now. Yoa Pedal, which finally has a new season. They ended the previous season, I guess, a few years back, right? They ended that previous season in the middle of a race.
I assume that they will never finish this race.
No, the new season's starting like in like less than a day, or like it already started, I think maybe, and I'm pretty sure it just picks right up where it left off.
In the middle of that race?
Yeah.
All right, so I doubt that season will finish the race. I think that whole season is going to get to the final leg of the race.
There's been enough seasons; they've already finished a handful of races.
I mean, Initial D got more car races done than they've gotten bike races.
They just took a few years off. They're way behind the manga, as far as I'm aware. All right. That remake, that anniversary remake of Urusei Yatsura.
I want to watch that. That looks so good. The animation looks so good. The voice acting sounds sublime.
If it's not any good, you can just watch
Urusei
Yatsura.
But it looks like, just judging it by its cover, it is the exact inverse of what happened with Sailor Moon Crystal.
Somehow, I don't know how the fuck this happened, right? Or how anyone remembered this at all, but I encountered at least 1 or 2 people outside my usual circle who remembered this, and I was like, wow, I'm not the only one. All right, so there's a show from way back called DigiCarrot. So this show... yeah, right? So this show was just some sort of comedy short series.
If you even know what we're talking about, your back definitely hurt when you woke up this morning.
Absolutely. And basically, there was a I don't know if there still is, but it might still exist, a chain of nerdy stores in Japan called Gamers. Like, Gamers was the name of the store, a physical retail store. And the store had like a mascot that was, this DigiCarrot cat girl kind of character with bells on her head or whatever, right? And
and Robbie and Rose, the rabbit that was, I guess, her nemesis.
I don't know, but there was like they made an anime series like based on this character, and now there's like a new remake of it for the anniversary or something like that. And it's basically the same thing as, like, I don't know if people realize, the Tick, the blue guy.
Yeah.
That there was a comic book store in the United States called New England Comics, and the Tick was like their mascot, and they would use the Tick as like a parody superhero in their advertising flyers, right? And then somebody made a real comic book series with the Tick, and then it became a cartoon, and then it became a TV show, and then right? And DigiCarrot is basically the same deal, where some store mascot became a thing. there were a lot better mascots that never became that had a narrative series. Right? It's like there's no fucking Tony the Tiger comic or cartoon. It's just commercials.
Well, the reason they haven't done that, I assume, is solely because so many people are so openly horny for Tony.
Just make a horny one.
Yeah.
Lean into it.
To make me the product manager, I will make you so much goddamn money. That demographic has unlimited resources.
The New York Rangers, right? You know, it's hockey season now. We just won big first game.
The undefeated New York Rangers.
Yeah. They are leaning hard into the Cried Vanajad bromance.
Oh, yeah.
Right? In the social media. They are not shying away. Right?
Like, it was amazing to see that they finally get it.
That Frosted Flakes could not do the exact same thing. Anyway.
Give me the gritty anime.
Yeah, so DigiCarrot remake of some kind or new season or something. What the hell? Like, what year? And then, of course, the number one, cannot be ignored. The Chainsaw Man anime has begun.
Yup.
Chainsaw Man is the biggest deal in the anime manga world.
I got to finish reading the manga because I feel like we should do a final thoughts, like full review of it. And I am going to watch the show.
Another manga series is coming. And, who knows how much of the anime season will cover. But yeah, the first episode is out.
Yep. And also don't forget Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which I think both my mom and dad will also be into.
I don't think that counts as like current anime season, but yeah, I do want to watch it.
Yeah.
A lot.
I mean, it is of all the animated things that I could watch right now, regardless of where and how I watch them, that's actually at the top of the list for me because that is the ultra-violent sci-fi type of anime that got me into anime when I was in 4th grade. Like, that is the
I don't
shit.
think it's going to be more ultra-violent than Chainsaw Man.
It is very much monofilament whip, the anime.
Chainsaw.
Monofilament
Chainsaw
whip.
Man. The bad guy in Chainsaw Man is the gun devil.
Yeah. I just want to remind you, anyone out there, if you imagine what cyberpunk is to people of our generation, we think of a little chain gun called Reason, and we think about monofilament whips. Now, fucking badass they sound like they are. But yeah, there is a lot of good anime to watch, irrespective of the doom and gloom we just talked about of capitalism destroying anything. So,
yeah, when is capitalism going to be able to destroy anime, or
will the passion keep it going?
I don't know.
All right, that's plenty to get into the main bit. But anyway, things of the day. So, I can't use that PBS Space Time that I watch and I used once because, we have a rule. I'm not going to keep using the same channel over and over again. PBS has a parallel channel with a different guy, so I can talk about it. There is PBS Eons, different guy, and this video is fascinating. So it's kind of topical because we're, years into basically the biggest pandemic in like modern history in the world. And this video is about the biggest pandemic ever. There was a pandemic with a virus that lasted at least 15 million years and was so absolutely devastating that almost all mammals alive today are the ancestors of the few that survived this 15 million year pandemic.
So, but mammals somehow made it.
Yes, because a lot of them didn't. And this video talks about how we figured out that this disease even existed. And this is remnants of the adaptations that allowed certain orders of mammals to survive this are in our DNA today. And we found these fragments in like every mammal. And then we found the very small number of mammals that do not have it. And there's a lot of stuff I do not understand enough to even briefly summarize. The video is only 10 minutes long. It does a way better job than I possibly could. This is so fascinating. Just watch it. But yeah, 15 million years. Hopefully coronavirus, maybe in like 100 years, we'll deal with it. Maybe 50, maybe 20.
I don't know.
Yeah, at least a ton of people I know got COVID relatively recently at work, And I did not, despite being directly, deeply exposed to all of those people. And the only difference between me and them, I got the new booster. None of them did. So if you did not get the new coronavirus booster, go get it. Like, do not wait.
All right. So I don't think I've used this guy as a thing of the day before.
You've talked about him with me, but I don't think you've actually talked about him on Geek Nights.
There is an internet creator, primarily on TikTok, but also a YouTube channel where he sometimes cross-posts his content. And I become a huge fan, right? This guy, I think his real name is Masood Boomgard.
Yep.
He's a stand-up comedian. I think he's from South Africa, because I watched some of his stand-up on YouTube, and that's what he mentions it once or twice, right? So I think that's where he is. Not 100% sure. And he has created a character, right? It's sort of like Uncle Roger, right? Where he's like, it's actually a stand-up comedian who's created a character that they pretend to be, and that's the joke, right? And the character he has created is Self-Help Singh, right? Singh. And he's an alternative life coach, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to parody, right, those self-help guru type people, right? Well, those people are all full of shit. So if you tried to parody them, right, it's like it's going to be one of those situations where you can't tell the parody apart from the reality, right? You're just going to end up being one of them. So what he's done is sort of genius in that it's like if you were alternative medicine would just be medicine. So an alternative self-help guru is just a legitimate like someone who will actually help you and give you good advice, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so all his videos are pretty much the philosophy that I already had in life, just being told to me. He's like, fuck the work deadlines. You'll actually die, right? It's like, if you have a shitty day, go home and go to bed.
Yep.
It's like, it's like all this really common sense advice you should actually follow, presented as if it's not good advice you shouldn't follow from some weird self-help guy.
And that is a magic combination of being parody but also being actually legit. Like, that is hard to do.
Yeah, so I've become a big fan of this guy.
Yeah, his philosophy is very much like how I live my life.
Yeah, it's like if you need a real self-help guru, you need the alternative self-help guru because the real ones are bullshit, right?
Yep.
So
what did I tell? Because I like someone I was doing some mentoring for in their career a few weeks ago, and I basically said the company won't burn down if this project doesn't go exactly right. Like,
that's right.
And if the company would burn down because this project doesn't go exactly right, you need to be paid way more money because this is a really important project.
Yeah.
One or the other.
If everyone is depending on this thing happening on a certain day, otherwise a disaster will happen, then that means you are so critical and so important that you should be paid $1 zillion. It's like, like the star franchise athlete on a team or something, right?
I would say that there are a few cases where society gets that wrong. That's a whole different conversation. Like, teachers should be paid a lot. They're very important. We basically treat them like shit.
Follow the advice of Self-Help Singh, the world, our society would be incredible. Like,
well, because remember, the thing about self-help, like actual self-help, not fake self-help, is similar to, psychotherapy and everything else. You can't therapy your way out of the crushing despair caused directly by capitalism and a cruel and indifferent society. But you can react to those evil and dangerous pressures in a more healthy manner. You can't solve the problem, but you can try to change your attitude about how you react to the problem you can't solve.
I'll always remember the mural that was painted, nearby some years back that said, anxiety is normal in an unjust society.
Yep.
It's like, there's injustice. If you don't stop the injustice, of course there's going to be anxiety. Right? It's like, if you just try to stop the anxiety and let the injustice continue, they ain't going to work.
Yep. So in the news, let's see. The panel Emily and I did at PAX West is, of course, on our website. The book club book is Binti, which read all 3. It'll take you like 3 hours, maybe 6 hours total if you're a slow reader. It's real good. We'll probably do the show on it next week on Thursday. I see no reason not to.
Unless something else comes up. Yeah,
yep, unless something else comes up. I didn't do the thing that might have gotten in the way of this episode because nobody else wanted to go. And also, it is crazy windy outside, which might have made that event a little bit difficult to attend comfortably.
Yeah. Why they have it on a Wednesday? So it's weird.
Yeah. But otherwise, I don't know. I guess you'll have to pick the next book club book. Are you going to do the choice?
I already have two books selected.
Yes, I also have 2 books selected for the following one. It's going to be a fun time. So if you don't remember, the way we're going to do the book club now is whoever's turn it is to pick has to choose 2 books, and the other of us chooses which of the 2. It's an I slice, you pick situation.
I cut, you choose.
Yep. Well, we'll see how it goes. And otherwise, website's coming along. We got a bunch of stuff going on. Stay tuned for, there will be Geek Nights panels at PAX Unplugged. Maybe there'll be Rim and Scott together. Maybe it'll just be Rim, as the last several PAXs has been. The world wonders, and we will see how that goes, but that's not now. And we don't have any major hiati coming up, except for the regularly scheduled ones around the end of the year holidays. So with that, let's talk about some shows. So you want to talk about Gundam first? Then I can talk about Star Trek?
Yeah, so people are aware, right? The original Mobile Suit Gundam, right? The original TV series from 1979, right? When that show came out, the art director of that show, right? What was his name? I always forget his name, even though it's right there. Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, right? He is also the person who made the Gundam The Origin manga. And just so we get this out of the way, if you want to experience the story of the original Gundam, right? Char, Amuro, all that shit, right? The manga is the best rendition, period, right? The 3 compilation movies being the second best rendition. Anyway, but when they were making that original TV series, right? The art director, Yasuhiko, he got sick around episode 15 or so, right? At least when they were working on those episodes. And he was out, and they were outsourcing some animation and stuff, and he just wasn't there for a few episodes or whatever. And episode 15, which was titled Cucuruz Doan's Island, right? It was this little story about an island that they went to and whatnot. That episode was animated poorly. Very poorly. If you've probably seen these meme images of the original Gundam with its head drawn very stupidly. If you see the image, you might recognize
and
it.
This is not that uncommon in anime. There, almost any long-running or major show will have the episodes that are drawn weird for some reason.
Right. Well, anyway, that image is from this episode. Right? It's just really bad animation in this episode. And because of the infamy of this episode, when the show was released in other countries, such as the US, that episode 15 was not included. And it didn't really matter that it wasn't included because it was sort of like the standalone side story deal that didn't have a huge impact on the overall plot. You weren't really missing much, right? The compilation movies don't really include anything that happened in that episode, right? It's it was compiled out. So, because of that, it became infamous, right? We want to see the lost episode.
Yeah.
Right?
Spoilers, most things that are infamous and they're not actually worth seeing.
Anyway, so for some reason, due to the infamy of this episode, right, they did what was sort of the opposite of a compilation movie as an expansion movie. It came out this past summer, right, in Japan. Is they made a whole movie, right? A whole movie that is just basically taking the script of that episode and stretching it out to movie length and producing it with modern animation, some CG robots a little bit, Now,
I got to say, that is a pretty cool thing to do, and I would like to see that happen to other things.
Right. So they just took this episode and they stretched it out. And I'm like, man, it's instead of compilation movies, you try to take a whole 39 episode series, 26 episodes, and squish it so someone can watch it in less time. What if you did an expansion, right? Why not take every episode of Evangelion and make each one a movie, right?
So
90 minutes each, right?
That was a trend for a brief time in anime. Remember, there was Tenchi Muyo, the OAV, And then there was Tenchi Muyo, the TV series that was just spread out and thinned.
What was it, 26 movies?
It was basically they took a short OAV and expanded it into a long, boring TV show. And the same thing happened with El Hazard.
You got your Futurama and your Adventure Time,
Yep.
movies that happened after the TV series, right? But those are only a handful. It wasn't.
Yep. No, take like the Puhoy episode of Adventure Time, which is one of the more important and famous episodes. That's the Pillow People episode. I have to keep saying that because apparently no one remembers that it's called Puhoy except me. I don't know why I remember that. But imagine if that was an hour-and-a-half long movie. That would be fantastic.
So anyway, they took this episode that was infamous, they expanded it and fleshed it out to be a whole movie. And when the movie starts, right, it says, this is a retelling of episode 15 of Mobile Suit Gundam, right? And now we're starting, right? It's like, it doesn't pretend that, like, it's like, it expects you to have just watched episodes 1 through 14. It's not, and to know who these characters are, right? Like, you can still enjoy the movie not knowing who the characters are, because you'll know that, like, oh, that's a Gundam pilot, I guess, right? I guess that's the captain. I guess that's their friend.
Yep.
Like, there won't be any meaning to those characters, because those characters that are the Gundam characters don't have any character development or exposition in the episode. Like, you're supposed to know who they are. But other than not knowing who they are, everything else about the plot, the new characters that are introduced just for the movie, et cetera, like, you can completely understand the story. It's totally self-contained. It begins, middles, ends. You can watch this, but it will have much more meaning if you know anything about the original Gundam, right? And is this some great anime movie like the ones we say, oh, you got to go to the theater and see them? No. it's a TV episode that's just way better produced and bigger and better and nicer and well done, and it's worth seeing, I guess, but it's not run out and see like we say for the Hosoda movies and the the Yuasa movies and the Miyazaki movies and all those, right? But yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the original Old Bad episode, so I don't know like what things were added, what things were removed, if any, what things were changed. But
I mean, that old episode is probably only 23 minutes long. You could just go find it.
Indeed, it is. But it, I still enjoyed it, right? It's pretty obvious, like, what was going to happen in the movie, right? It wasn't like, a complicated plot. But it, it panned out well. Everything really came together. There were, a good, progressive arc. But basically, I guess, short summary of it, just to, to wrap things up, is, the main Gundam characters are on their ship, chilling, awaiting new orders, right? And they get ordered to go on this mission to clean up some remnant hostiles from a previous battle that are on this island, right? And they go to the island, and there's this dude there who's got who's obviously a Zeon guy, and he's got a fucking,
a Zaku.
Yeah, he's got a Zaku, and he's hella dangerous, right? And they can't really beat him. And then there's bad weather. And so after they send people in to go find out what's going on with the island, and then they think they're dead because they're lost, and they can't search the island right now with the bad weather, right?
Well, that's like the plot of, I don't know, a third of all Star Trek episodes. Anyway,
it's an excuse to have them trapped there, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out, the Doan guy, the super badass Zaku pilot, he's got all these kids on the island he's taking care of, right? He's a good guy. And he's up to something good. He's abandoned the Zeon people. He's just defending the island from war in general, right? And then, shit happens, and it turns out the secret shit on the island, of course, right? And, eventually Zeon comes back to the island, and the good guys come back to the island, and they fight. And then everything is resolved. Somehow.
I mean, I guess it had to be because it was originally a self-contained episode that wasn't even important enough to compile.
It had to be, otherwise there wouldn't be episode 16. Episode 16 is coming next. you at least know that much, right? It's really, a story of the characters that are introduced for this episode, right? Doan and the children. And, the Gundam characters are just sort of, passing through to sort of reveal.
Which is interesting because that is how, like, the Slayers movie / OAVs were. That is how a lot of the One Piece movies are.
It's a lot like a Slayers movie.
Yep. Like, the main characters don't have an arc. They're just there and interact with the new characters who have an arc and then are never seen again.
Yep, exactly. Right. So it's one of those. It's a pretty good one of those, actually.
Yeah,
Like, if you took and made the original Gundam series and made a movie like this for every episode, that would be a very positive, incredible thing, right? It's like, it might take 49 years if they do one a year. It might take 98 yeif they do one every other year. But I'm glad they made this. It sort of puts the infamy thing to rest. If you're a Gundam fan, see it, and if not, but yeah, they aired it. Oh, I forgot to mention this. They aired it they didn't air it. It was in U.S. theaters, 2 nights only, 1 night sub, the next night dub, 1 showing of each, and that was it.
Oh.
So to see it now, you're going to have to either wait for it to be streamed or Blu-rayed or pirated,
Yar.
or imported or something, right? But I went to the movie theater and I saw it during the 1 night sub screening, and that was,
All right, not bad. So the thing I watched that I know Scott will never watch.
Never watch.
Yeah, so I'm on a big Star Trek kick again. I rewatched DS9, and if you're a Star Trek fan, the Star Trek cup overfloweth recently. And other than the movies, because there's drama, all of the Star Trek TV shows are just on Paramount Plus. So I'm actually paying for that service because we were watching like all the Star Treks. But there are actually 2 different independent Star Trek animated series that are currently airing simultaneously that are set in different times in different places. So this now brings the total of animated Star Treks to 3, if any of you remember the original animated series, which
even I knew that existed, even though I'd never watched it.
Didn't have that many episodes. In fact, it had 2 seasons, so there was like 22 episodes total of that animated series, the original one. So Lower Decks I've talked about. It's fantastic. I love the shit out of it. Star Trek Prodigy is interesting because if I had to describe it, one, if you did not know Star Trek existed, like say you'd never heard of Star Trek, but you had heard of Star Wars, and I showed you a random episode of, I don't know, Star Trek The Next Generation, you would not think that this was Star Wars. You would know that it was something different. Just obviously, it's so different in like how action is portrayed and how characters talk and what kinds of stories there are. But and I would say that is true of almost all Star Treks. But if I showed you a random episode of Star Trek Prodigy and you had never heard of Star Trek, I think you would assume this is set in the Star Wars universe.
Well, but there would first of all, even no matter how it's structured or the plot or the characters, right? There would be some people wearing like, Starfleet uniforms.
There really aren't in Star Trek Prodigy.
All right.
There is one character wearing a Star Trek uniform.
Oh, well, that would give it away. Just one is enough.
But if you had never heard of Star Trek, that's just there's that one human wearing the weird uniform.
The other thing is that Star Wars, no matter which Star Wars it is, right? There are certain Star Wars things that are always gonna appear, like a ship that looks something like an X-wing.
Yep. There's stuff like that in this.
Right, or a guy wearing some armor that's reminiscent of a stormtrooper.
Yep, there is basically that. There is basically a Darth Sidious. There is basically a Darth the bad guys are like
aesthetically, you would think that oh, is that an evil?
If you watch this, you look at one guy and think, whoa, is that like the Emperor's son? You see the other guy, you're like, whoa, is that just Darth Maul?
So you're saying that they have pirated Star Wars aesthetics and into their show.
So it's more that it's telling the kind of story that Star Wars, like the expanded Star Wars universe would tell, more so than what Star Trek typically does. Also,
why is it called Prodigy? Is it the name of a ship like usual?
So that's actually TBD. So only one season is out. There's more coming. But basically, the ship in this one is not called the Prodigy. It's a whole other thing going on. So, to avoid getting into the details of Star Trek, for the Scott audience, this is set after one of the other Star Treks called Voyager. And it's way out in like so far away from the Federation that the Federation basically doesn't exist out there. And a Star Trek Federation ship has basically crashed or something happened to it. So it's out alone, way out in the edge of the universe. A bunch of kids who are basically slaves on a planet that is run by an evil Star Wars looking emperor type dude.
Well, that sounds like the first Star Trek series.
Yep.
Slaves on a planet.
They basically find this ship and use it to escape from this planet.
Oh.
The ship happens to be a Federation ship. They basically steal a Star Trek ship.
Full-size one? Like that has a city inside?
Yeah, it is a full-size Star Trek ship that is super...
Just a couple kids?
Yeah, a couple kids.
Works? It crashed and it still works?
Well, we don't know which deal. Like, I'm trying to avoid the plot.
Thousands upon thousands of corpses and skeletons?
No, it's empty. In fact, the only thing on it, when the kids get onto it, is a hologram. And holograms in the Star Trek universe are semi-sentient, like it's complicated.
Yeah.
So,
no one was guarding this?
no one was guarding it. They
or
find it.
Salvaging it?
No, in fact, the evil guys vaguely knew it was there and were looking for it, but the kids found it first.
It's enormous.
Yeah.
Do not find it.
That is all revealed. That's part of the story of the show.
This doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay.
So the kids find...
Even with my little Star Trek knowledge, it makes no sense.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy, actually. The kids find the ship, and the deal is the ship, the only thing on the ship is the hologram, which is a copy of a real starship captain from a previous Star Trek set way before this show happens, like Captain Janeway of Voyager.
That's good.
So the hologram sees these kids and is like, I guess you're the new cadets. And the kids are like, boy, howdy. Yes.
The kids be like, we don't have to do it. I mean, they want to, but if they didn't.
The kids basically want to steal the ship. So they're like.
Obviously, they want to, but they could just be like, you're just a hologram. You can't tell us what to do.
Well, the hologram is currently able to run the whole ship. And
that's how the corpses got disposed of. Okay.
Well, there are no corpses. We don't know the deal with the ship yet. So the kids basically just are on the ship. They act like, yes, of course.
The hologram alone.
Of course we're cadets. And the hologram's like, good, because this ship is designed to train cadets on this whole sort of special mission. And they don't understand. And adventure awaits.
Coincidence. That's probably a lie.
Yeah, there's a whole real Star Trek plot, but that does not really get revealed until the end of season 1. But if I had to describe what the show is actually about, not in a Star Trek context, these kids basically find this ship and go off on an adventure. And there's a sinister undercurrent, and the evil guys are chasing them. There's almost no human characters, and it is just...
The evil guys who are enslaving them can chase them through space. It means they can fly in space.
Yes.
How come they weren't able to locate a giant ship on their own planet?
That's kind of revealed and complicated. So
cloaking device?
I'm not going to explain to you the deal with cloaking devices in Star Trek because there's a lot.
I'm sure only bad guys have them.
That's actually low-key kind of true for complicated reasons.
That's right. I know like this bare minimum of I'm a nerd, even though I don't like Star Trek and have watched almost none.
So the deal is to end the war in the old Star Trek, only the bad guys had cloaking devices. The Federation could easily develop this technology, and to end those wars, the Federation basically signed a treaty where they agreed they would never research or use cloaking technology under any circumstances ever. They're just like, our ships will always be visible.
I didn't know that there was a reason for it.
There is a canonical reason for it because it is a plot point in one of the Star Treks, Deep Space Nine, because the Romulans give the Federation permission to use one ship with a cloaking device for complicated reasons. Anyway, I digress. So the show really is almost like a kid's introduction to Star Trek. It's almost like, imagine if there's a kid in the real world today who's like 12, 10, maybe 8, and you want to introduce them to Star Trek. This show kind of almost walks a kid through what's the deal with Star Trek, but is also a good kids show. I would say this is absolutely a show aimed at kids, for kids, good for kids. It's very Star Wars-like. It's super fun.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that I just talked about Gundam because at least the part about kids finding a powerful technology is a very Gundam thing, right?
Yep.
Instead of one kid finding one robot and becoming the best pilot of it, it's a group of kids finding a whole ship and becoming the crew, right?
Yep. And they escape with this ship, and shenanigans in space ensue, and the bad guys are trying to chase them. And I'm not going to spoil anything that happens, but for Star Trek nerds, it's interesting because until the last episode, you don't really know when this is set, because it feels like it's set way after most of the Star Trek most people have ever watched. And it is set after a lot of Star Trek. But if you don't know anything about Star Trek, it's just a sci-fi story that's actually pretty compelling and pretty well done and good for kids.
I just want to say, we can end the show, but, you know, the trope of kids find, acquire, powerful thing, magic, technology, object, whatever.
It's a good genre.
Right. It's like, that's a good genre. It's been done a million times, right? We've also occasionally seen the adjacent one of two different groups of kids or two kids, right?
Yep.
Both acquire some kind of MacGuffin technology magic at the same time, and one's good and one's evil. We've seen that.
Yep.
Right. What I haven't seen is anyone go over two, right? 3 or 4 different, not kids in the same group. I've seen that, right? But I'm saying like 3 or 4 or more different groups of kids all find powerful things at the same time.
Isn't that just Pokemon?
No, because the Pokemon's about the one kid who's the champ. Everyone else is just normal Pokemon.
No, but there's all the evil enemy groups.
Pokemon, you never have a situation where like 5 different Ashes are out there, all catching different legendaries who all the Pokemon, you know, league at the same time, right? You don't see that. It's one person who's catching the legendaries.
You know what's funny? Even the isekai shows tend to have this. You often, like Fushigi Yugi did this even. Go all the way back. Multiple people get transported to the magical world or the sci-fi world or the video game world.
That's like, you know, El Hazard. They go together.
But they go together, but almost always, some of them end up like on the evil side and some of them end up on the good side.
El Hazard, right? He's got the Bugram. One guy has 2 groups, right? The good ones and the bad ones. But there wasn't a three-way.
Yep.
Right? Or a 4-way.
I feel like the furthest we've gotten is occasionally you see...
A little less black and white.
I think you occasionally see the 3-way, but the 3-way is usually... Like,
give me an example of the 3-way.
So you see some of those less watched isekai shows.
One book, one movie, one.
So the trope would be I think it boils down to you might have an individual character. I'm trying to think of a good specific example that isn't just like a random El Hazard character, where you've got the typical 2 factions, but then there's one character who's like, fuck all this, I don't care about any of this, I'm just doing my own thing, and they're a side character, but they never are involved in the real plot.
Yeah, I'm talking main characters, right?
Yeah, I don't know. But I would say if you want to introduce kids to Star Trek, Prodigy is like the gateway show to get a kid interested in Star Trek at all, because it kind of, over the course of the show, teaches you what's the deal with Star Trek and what's the deal with the Federation in a pretty interesting way. But it is a kid's show. It's not like the grimdark nonsense of Picard or the typical Star Trek fare of what most Star Treks are like. All right. Boop.